It's a financial burden that many students struggle to manage. Scholarships and part-time jobs can only cover so much, and the pressure to succeed academically while juggling financial stress is overwhelming. Ramen noodles every day gets old. It's the go-to meal for broke students, but it's not exactly nutritious or satisfying. I needed cash, fast. The constant worry about money was affecting my studies and my mental health. I felt trapped in a cycle of poverty and stress. My roommate told me about this website, Sugar Seekers. At first I thought it was a joke. We laughed about it, imagining the kind of people who would use such a site. But as the days went by and my financial situation worsened, I started to consider it more seriously. Rich older people help out college students. It sounded like a dream come true. They provide financial support in exchange for companionship or simple tasks. It seemed like an easy way to make money without the time commitment of a traditional job. Seemed too good to be true. I was skeptical, of course. The idea of meeting strangers online and relying on them for money felt risky. But the more I thought about it, the more desperate I became. I needed a solution, and I needed it fast. I was desperate. Rent was due, and I was living off dollar menu everything. My apartment was a mess, filled with empty food containers and overdue bills. The stress was unbearable, and I knew I had to do something to change my situation. I caved and made a profile. It felt strange putting myself out there like that. I filled out my information, uploaded a few photos, and waited. I didn't have high hopes, but I figured it was worth a shot. Didn't think anyone would actually message me. I was prepared for disappointment, but to my surprise, I got a notification almost immediately. My heart raced as I opened the message, unsure of what to expect. I was wrong. This guy, John, messaged almost immediately. He seemed genuine and kind, not at all what I had imagined. He complimented my profile and expressed interest in helping me out. Said he loved my profile. He told me he admired my ambition and wanted to support me in my academic journey. It was flattering, and for the first time in a while I felt a glimmer of hope. Wanted to help me out. He explained that he had been in a similar situation when he was younger, and understood the struggles of being a student. He offered to provide financial assistance in exchange for companionship and occasional help with errands. He offered an allowance that made my jaw drop. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my bank account. The thought of being able to pay my rent and buy groceries without worry was incredibly tempting. All I had to do was some simple tasks for him. I was skeptical, obviously. The idea of relying on a stranger for money felt risky, but the offer was too good to pass up. I weighed the pros and cons, trying to decide if it was worth the risk. But the thought of paying my rent on time was too tempting. The financial relief it promised was too significant to ignore. I imagined the weight lifting off my shoulders, the stress melting away. It was a chance to finally breathe easy. I agreed to meet him for coffee. It felt like a safe first step. Public place, no commitments. Just a conversation to see if this was something I could actually go through with. Just to talk. I told myself I needed to know more about him and what he expected. It was a leap into the unknown, but I was willing to take it if it meant a chance at a better life. John seemed normal enough, well-dressed, polite, a little awkward. He had this air of confidence that made you think he knew exactly what he was doing. His clothes were always immaculate, and he carried himself with a certain grace that was hard to ignore. But there was something about him that felt off. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact, or the way he seemed to be constantly looking over his shoulder. Whatever it was subtle, but it was there. He talked a lot about his business ventures, whatever that meant. He would go on and on about deals and investments, using jargon that sounded impressive, but was ultimately meaningless to me. It was like he was trying to dazzle me with his knowledge, but it only made me more suspicious. He never gave any specifics, just vague references to big opportunities and game-changing projects. It was all very enigmatic. Then he laid out the first task. It was simple enough, or so it seemed. He handed me a piece of paper with an address scribbled on it. His instructions were clear but left no room for questions. It was almost as if he was testing me, seeing how far I would go without probing too much. I need you to go to this address and pick up a package. His tone was casual, but there was an underlying tension that I couldn't quite place. It was like he was daring me to refuse, but I didn't. I was too intrigued, too curious about what this mysterious task entailed. He slid me an envelope. Don't open it. His eyes bore into mine as he said it, making it clear that this was non-negotiable. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, and I couldn't help but wonder what was inside. But I didn't dare to look. Not yet, just bring it to our next meeting. Easy enough, I thought. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was getting in over my head. The whole thing felt like a scene out of a spy movie, and I was the unwitting protagonist. Inside the envelope was a wad of cash, crisp new bills that looked like they had just come from the bank. It was more money than I'd ever seen in one place, and it made my heart race. What kind of task was worth this much money? Way more than I expected. It was almost too good to be true, and you know what they say about things that seem too good to be true. But I was too caught up in the moment to think clearly. The money was a powerful motivator, and it clouded my judgment. He hadn't even asked for my bank details. That should have been a red flag right there. Who hands over that much cash without any form of security or guarantee? But John seemed to operate on a different set of rules, and I was too intrigued to walk away. This John guy was either the most trusting person ever, or he was playing a very different game. His smile was disarming, almost too sincere. It made me want to believe him, to trust that he had my best interests at heart. But deep down, I knew better, or something was seriously off. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. There were too many unanswered questions, too many things that didn't add up. But I was already in too deep to back out now. I drove to the address he gave me. The neighborhood was rough, the kind of place you wouldn't want to be caught in after dark. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I navigated the narrow, dimly lit streets. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat, and my heart pounded in my chest. It was a dingy pawn shop on the wrong side of town, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen a legitimate customer in years. The windows were grimy, and the neon sign flickered ominously. It was the last place I expected to be picking up a package. I almost turned around right there, but the money... The thought of that cash waiting for me was enough to push me forward. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, my mind racing with possibilities. The money made me go in. It was like a magnet pulling me toward the unknown. As I pushed open the door, a bell jingled overhead, and I stepped into the dimly lit interior. The air was thick with the smell of dust and old things, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. But there was no turning back now. I was committed, for better or worse. The pawn shop smelled like old cigarettes and disappointment. The air was thick with the scent of desperation, a mix of sweat and stale smoke that clung to everything. The dim lighting cast long shadows, making the place feel even more like a den of forgotten dreams. I could almost hear the echoes of countless deals made in hushed tones, each one a story of someone trying to make ends meet or escape their troubles. I gave the clerk John's name. He barely looked up, just grunted in acknowledgement. It was clear he had seen it all before. The note felt heavy in my hand, as if it carried more than just ink on paper. It was a key to a world I was only beginning to understand, a world where favours were traded like currency and trust was a rare commodity. He grunted and handed me a small velvet pouch. That was it. No questions, no explanations. The pouch was soft to the touch, its contents a mystery. I wondered what could be so important, yet so secretive. The weight of it in my hand was both reassuring and unsettling, a tangible reminder of the unknown path I was treading. I met John the next day, gave him the pouch. We met in a park, a place where people went to relax and unwind. But for us, it was a meeting ground for clandestine exchanges. John took the pouch without a word, his face unreadable. It was as if this was just another day for him, another transaction in a long line of secrets. He didn't even open it, just slipped it into his coat pocket and handed me an envelope. The envelope was thick, filled with cash. It was more money than I had seen in a long time. But with it came a new task, another step deeper into this strange world. The simplicity of the exchange was almost surreal, like a scene from a movie. Just gave me another envelope of cash and a new task. This time it was leaving the same pouch in a specific locker at the bus station. The instructions were clear, precise. There was no room for error. The bus station was busy, people coming and going, each with their own stories. I felt like a spy, carrying out a mission in plain sight. This time, it was leaving the same pouch in a specific locker at the bus station. The locker was old, its paint chipped and faded. I placed the pouch inside, closed the door, and turned the key. It felt like I was sealing away a part of myself, locking it up with the pouch. The key was cold in my hand, a small but significant piece of metal that held the power to unlock secrets. Then, taking a photo of a certain house at night. The house was ordinary, nondescript. But under the cover of darkness, it took on an air of mystery. I snapped the photo quickly, my heart racing. What was so important about this house? Who lived there? The questions swirled in my mind, but I knew better than to ask. In this world, curiosity could be dangerous. Each task was weirder than the last. One day, I was asked to deliver a package to a remote location. The next, I had to retrieve an item from a hidden spot in the city. Each task pushed the boundaries of normalcy, making me question my own sanity. But with each completed task came a bigger reward, a larger envelope of cash. It was a dangerous game, but the stakes were high and the rewards were tempting. But each payment was bigger too. The money was intoxicating, a powerful motivator. It made the risk seem worth it, made the strange tasks feel like a small price to pay. I found myself looking forward to the next envelope, the next task. It was a cycle, a loop that I couldn't break free from. The allure of easy money was too strong, pulling me deeper into the web of secrets and lies. I tried to justify it, told myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong, that I was just a messenger, a middleman. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Each task left a mark on me, a stain that couldn't be washed away. I was becoming a part of this world, a world where morality was blurred and lines were crossed without a second thought. It wasn't like I was hurting anyone, right? The thought was a weak comfort, a flimsy shield against the growing unease. I told myself that as long as no one was getting hurt, it was okay. But the truth was, I didn't know what my actions were leading to. I was a cog in a machine, a small part of a larger plan that I couldn't see. And that uncertainty gnawed at me, a constant reminder of the precarious path I was on. But a knot of unease was growing in my stomach. It was a physical manifestation of my doubts, a tightness that wouldn't go away. Each new task brought with it a fresh wave of anxiety, a reminder that I was in over my head. The money was good, but was it worth the cost? I didn't know. All I knew was that I was in too deep to back out now. The only way out was forward, into the unknown. Then came the request that changed everything. "I need you to stay at a house," John said, his voice casual. "Just for one night." Simple. He must have seen the look on my face. "It's worth a lot of money," he added quickly. I should have said no, I knew I should. But the money was enough to cover my tuition for the entire semester. My common sense drowned under a tidal wave of desperation. He gave me an address, a key, and a burner phone. "I'll be in touch through this," he said, his eyes holding mine a little too long. "And follow the rules." Section 5, the creepy rules. The house was secluded, surrounded by dark woods. It looked like something out of a horror movie. John's rules didn't help. "Rule number 1, he'd said, his voice serious. "No leaving your room after dark, no matter what you hear." Rule number 2, "Don't answer the phone unless it's me. Don't call anyone else." Rule number 3, "Don't open the curtains, especially at night." The rules were strange, specific. They sent shivers down my spine. But I told myself it was just John being eccentric. Rich people were weird, right? I spent the afternoon pacing the room, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. The silence was almost worse than hearing something. As dusk fell, shadows stretched across the room like grasping claws. I kept seeing John's face in my mind, his eyes dark and unreadable. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to distract myself, read a book, anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. I was trapped, alone, in a stranger's house, following a stranger's rules. What had I gotten myself into? The night passed in a blur of fitful sleep and heart-pounding wakefulness. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined things lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight. By the time dawn broke, I was a nervous wreck. My phone buzzed. It was John. "Meet me downstairs for breakfast," the text read, "and bring the key." My stomach churned. I hadn't seen him in person since he'd given me the task, and something about his message felt off, colder than usual. The kitchen table was set for two. A single plate with a plate of pancakes sat in front of one chair. John wasn't there. I sat down, picking at the food. Something felt wrong. The silence was unnerving. Then I noticed it. A small velvet pouch sat next to the plate. The same kind of pouch I had picked up from the pawn shop. The same kind I had delivered to the bus station locker. My blood ran cold. I grabbed the pouch, my hands shaking. It was heavier than I remembered. I slowly untied the string and peeked inside. Two perfectly formed, pearly white teeth gleamed back at me. I dropped the pouch, the contents spilling onto the table. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. What were these? Whose were they? Before I could process anything else, my phone buzzed again. It was another message from John. "I hope you enjoyed breakfast," it read. "The teeth are a bonus. Consider it a tip for being such a good girl and following the rules." The message ended with a smiling emoji. I stared at the phone, my breath catching in my throat. A wave of nausea washed over me. I knew then with chilling certainty that I had gotten myself into something truly sinister, and I had no idea how to get out.